Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Let us first consider undamped, basically the undamped free vibration of a multi-degree of freedom system. Okay, an undamped free vibration, the equation of motion that we get, basically we are going to set the force vector equal to 0 and we are not going to consider any damping. In that case, this is the mathematical expression to represent the undamped free vibration, okay, of a multi-degree of freedom system. Okay. Now, before getting into the mathematical formulation of it, I need to find out what is, in the end, our goal is to find out displacements, right? Okay. And for a multi-degree of freedom system, these displacements, okay, can be written as u1t, u2t, and so on. Now, if you look at the equation of motion for this one, and let us consider a 2-degree of freedom system just to demonstrate. Okay, this equation can be written as mass m1, mass m2, and I'm saying in general, so this is not specific to any system. In general, I would have these elements, correct? So mass 21, mass 22, this times the acceleration vector plus k11, k12, and then k21, k22. Okay, so a question might come to your mind. I have n degree, if I have a matrix like this and the order of matrix is, let us say, n. So let us say there is n degrees of freedom. Okay, why can I not solve all the differential equation? Because again, this would be a second order differential equation. Okay, separately and get the equation. The reason is I have coupled equation now. So I cannot individually solve this equation. So basically what I mean, if write it like that, this is m11 times u1. So each equation has u1 and u2, both parameters. So I cannot solve any individual equation separately for that u1 or u2. Okay. So in general, this is the equation I have. This is equal to 0. And the second one is m21, m22, u2 plus k22, u1, and then k22, u2. Okay, so as you can see, each of these have terms in u1 and u2. So you cannot individually solve these equations unless they are uncoupled. So in general, when we get the equation of motion for a multi-degree of freedom system, these are coupled and okay, so n coupled differential equation. Okay, and these are coupled through. Okay, so these equations are coupled through the mass matrix and the stiffness matrix both. Okay, so I cannot solve them individually. So we'll look at the solution methods, how to solve actually these equations separately for u1 and u2. And always keep in mind the u1 represents the displacement history at degree of freedom 1, u2 represents the displacement history at degree of freedom 2, and similarly uj represents the displacement history at degree of freedom j. Okay, so in general I cannot solve them individually because these are n coupled differential equation, okay, and coupled through the mass and stiffness matrix. So unless they are uncoupled, I cannot solve them individually. Okay, so we'll look at that later. Now, before going into that, let us get into, okay, how do we characterize the motion of a multi-degree of freedom system? Okay, and for that, what I'll do, first I'll start with one DOF or single degree of freedom system. Now, if you remember, this is a single degree of freedom system, right? I have a mass m here and k. And this, the motion of this system, we said that, okay, I represent it in terms of the lateral displacement u. Okay. So it can deflect like this. And for the small displacement, we said that this is how it is going to deflect. Okay. So there is only one way in which a single degree of freedom system can respond, and it is like this. And if you look at this, okay, if you look at it, there is no other way. Can it deflect like this? I mean, can you think in any situation this system would deflect like this? Okay, if it's all the mass is concentrated at the top, okay, there is no way this system can deflect like this. So there is only one shape. I'm not talking about the size. Okay, I'm not talking about basically the overall magnitude or the amplitude, but the shape would always be like this. And basically in the generalized SDF system, that is what we studied, that we consider the deflected shape to be represented as a single shape function. Okay, so there we did approximate analysis. We assume a shape function, but now we are going to do analysis in which we are exactly going to find out that shape function. Okay, now I know that this system cannot deflect like this. Okay, but now from this 1D system, let us consider another system in which I have a very heavy mass at the top, and compared to that, I have a very small mass compared to that mass here. Okay. Then in the second case, I have very small mass here and very heavy mass here. And in the third case, I have comparable masses at both places. Now, can I make this claim and stop me if you like? Okay. That in this case, the overall motion is likely to be governed by the motion of the heavy mass. Okay. So if it wants to move it like this, it will move it like this. Okay. In this one, again, the motion is, and I'm just assuming that stiffness is same for both cases. Okay. Because we look at that stiffness is also responsible for how it is going to deflect. Okay. So in the first case, it is going to deflect like this. In the second case, the motion is again going to be governed by the heavy mass, how it is going to deflect. Okay. But in the third case, when I have comparable masses, okay, it might happen that the system can deflect like this, okay, in this shape here, or it might deflect like something like this, okay, or like this. Okay, so these two represent the same shape. Okay, so a way a structure is going to respond to ground vibration, or let us say external force, depends on the relative distribution of masses. Can I make that claim? So in a multiple degree of freedom, mass plays a big role in how it is going to respond to the excitation. Okay. Anybody has any objection to that? Okay. Now let us consider the second example in which the masses are same now. So I consider same masses. However, in first case, I have a very flexible system between the first and the second mass, but a much thicker system here. In the second case, again, I have the same mass, but now it is something like this. And then it is very flexible between the ground and the first one, or the support or the first mass. And in the third one, let us say it is comparable. Okay. Now, this is very flexible here, right? So in this case, what happens that the motion is now would be governed by the stiffness of this, because it is flexible. Okay, this would vibrate much more compared to the rigid system between the support and this mass. And again, in this one, this is going to govern the overall response. If this is very flexible, okay, this is going to deform more, and the likely going to follow, okay, similar pattern here. In this case, it is going to deflect less, let us say like this. Okay, and the upper mass is going to deflect more. And if they are comparable, okay, the overall response would be in between. So again, something like either it can deflect like this, or in general, it can deflect like this. Okay. So how a structure is going to respond to apply force, a multi-degree of freedom system, it depends on the distribution of mass and stiffness. Okay, Now we know that for single degree of freedom system, the frequency depends on the mass and stiffness, but we did not talk about the distribution because it was a single degree of freedom system. But when we consider multi-degree of freedom system, I have to talk about the distribution and I have to talk about shape. There is no shape for single degree of freedom system because it can only deflect in one shape. Okay, but for multi-degree of freedom system, it can deflect in multiple ways. So the question comes, how do I know if I apply a force, which one of these is going to be the dominant mode of response and where it is more likely, or which of these mode of response is more likely to represent the overall response? Okay, so that we do by studying the mode shapes. Shapes are the characteristic shape, okay, in which a structure can deflect naturally, okay, and that depends on the mass and the stiffness. Okay, now a structure can have as many mode shapes as the degree of freedom, and that you can easily guess. If it has two masses, then we had 2 degrees of freedom, one mass, 1 degree of freedom. Okay, one mode shape, sorry. If you have two masses, then two mode shape, or 2 degrees of freedom, then two mode shape. If you have n degree of freedom, you would have similarly n mode shapes, n possible ways in that they can deflect. Okay, so the total response depends on the mode shapes and the relative distribution of masses. So in general, we say that total response, okay, can be written, okay, as a linear combination of all the different mode shapes. Okay, so let us say I have one mode shape, which if I like it, write it like that. Let us say I write phi1, in which case phi1 basically represents the modal coordinate. So let us say if this is 1 and this is half, then phi1 is basically 1, and if this is half, then this is the mode shape. So it can be either this or it can be either that. I don't exactly know how much of each mode is going to contribute to the total response. Okay, so what do? I take a linear combination of this times phi1 plus another factor times phi2, and if it has n modes, then it would be the linear combination of all. Okay, and it might happen that the contribution of this mode would be significantly higher than this mode. Okay, and then we can neglect all these modes and just consider this mode. But in general, can I write it like that? So all I'm saying that the structure can deflect in many possible ways. And if it has n degree of freedom, it can deflect in n possible ways. Okay, and I'm going to write down the total response as a linear combination of n such mode. Okay, and we are going to find out if all the modes contributes or some modes contributes more than the other modes, or only one mode contributes significantly and I can neglect other mode. Okay, those things we can do, but in general I can do this, right? Anybody has any objection up to this point? Okay, and basically I try to explain in terms of, like, response of any individual given to a certain situation. Okay, and I, like, I equate that to a multi-degree of freedom system. You think it like this. Okay, at any time instance, okay, a person who has certain characteristic, okay, and those are the basic characteristic, okay, those are mutually exclusive. So you can have emotions like anger, you can have emotions like happiness, you can have emotions like surprise, you can have emotions like, so these are the different traits of an individual. Now let us consider, given to any situation, okay, how you are going to react depends on the situation that you are subjected to. So you consider your response to be a response of a system that is made up of different characteristic behavior, and at any kind of situation the overall response might be 90% anger, 5% surprise, okay, 5% happiness. So in general, the overall response depends on the basic traits or characteristics. Okay, And how much is the total response depends on the situation that you are subjected to or the excitation you are subjected to. Okay, so try to think it like that. A structure also behaves like that. A multi-degree of freedom system, it actually behaves like that. Okay, so what happens? There are different ways in which a structure can respond. Okay, these are called the characteristic shapes or the mode shapes of the structure. The total response is a combination of all these mode shapes multiplied with some factors. Okay, and depending upon the excitation, some modes are going to contribute more to the response and some less, but that depends on the excitation. However, the mode shapes itself, they do not depend on the excitation, because mode shapes itself depend on the distribution of mass and the stiffness. These are inherent property of a structure. Okay, and that, okay, something that I've told you, some person can always be more angry, or he can be more happy, or he can be like that, but those are individual characteristic of a person. Okay, so those do not depend on the external situation. The overall response actually does depend on that. Okay, so the characteristic mode shapes are the properties of a structure. Okay, that do not depend on the excitation. It depends on the structural properties like mass and stiffness and their distribution, all three. Okay, is this clear up to this point? The understanding of mode shapes and physically how, what does it mean, what does it reflect? Anybody has any doubt in this? So once you understand what a mode shape is, let us get into the excitation, and I'll start with a single degree of freedom system. No, sorry, let us use a 2 degree of freedom system. So in general, if you subject to some excitation, okay, for a free vibration, if you, let us say, if you give it initial displacement, okay, which is something like this. Okay, you give it initial displacement to this 2 degree of freedom system, and I'm going to represent this as u1, u2 like this. Okay, and you basically give initial displacement u0, u2 0, and here u1 0. Now, if you look at, okay, if you look at the response history of u1 and u2 subject to these initial condition, you will see that in general, okay, in general, these u1 and u2, so basically ut here, okay, are not harmonic. So in general, if you give initial displacement u1 0, u2 0 to different degrees of freedom, and then you look at the response of u1t and u22 at different degree of freedom, those are not harmonic. Now compare that to single degree of freedom system. In single degree of freedom system, if you had given initial displacement u0 and u dot 0, the response was u0 cos omega nt plus u dot 0 omega n sin omega nt. So this was actually harmonic, right? Harmonic means what? It can be written as some constant times sine or cos function, which I can do here, right? This is basically some amplitude times cos omega and minus phi. Okay, this both term can be clubbed together. So the response was something like this with a period, certain period. So what happens? That is what we observed for single degree of freedom system. But when we do that, when we give initial displacement to a multi-degree of freedom system, in general, the response u1 0 and u2 0 are not harmonic. Okay, plus the shape of this is actually changing with time as well. Okay, so that is in general, or okay, the most general condition. So those are not harmonic. Okay, and that is if you make the contrast against the single degree of freedom system. Okay, you can see that this is a new conclusion. Now what happens? There exists a certain combination of u1 and u2, so that if you apply u1 0 and u2 0, so there exists a specific combination of u1 and u20, that if you initiate your motion using this u10 and u20, then for that case, okay, so for that case, what will happen? The motion becomes harmonic. Okay, so there only exists, okay, very specific number of combination of u1 and u20 for which this motion becomes harmonic. Okay, and the shape actually does not change with time, so it maintains its shape. So now if you consider u1t and u2t, okay, it actually maintains its shape. Okay. So let us say this is u1t here, u2t here. Now the motion is harmonic. Okay. This specific combination of the displacement, initial displacement, that is assigned to this degree of freedom so that the motion is harmonic. Okay. This shape that is represented through it is called the characteristic shape. As we have previously defined, also mode shape. So the question is, how many such combination exist for any degree of freedom? If we have n degree of freedom, then there would exist n such combinations for which if you initiate the motion with those initial conditions, then they would maintain the shape, and the resulting motion at each degree of freedom u1 and u2, it would be simple harmonic motion. Okay, so if I have a 2 degree of freedom system like this here, okay, then one way it could be this, the other could be something like this. So if you look at that, the shape is actually maintained. Okay, and these are, we are not actually deriving this. These are observed experimentally, that if you do that, this is what is going to happen. And if you have n degrees of freedom, then there would be n modes. We are going to get into the mathematical derivation of all those things. Okay, but this is the observation that we get from the multi-degree of freedom system. So in that case again, okay, I can represent the motion at degree of freedom 1 and 2. Okay, let us say with some initial. Remember, it won't be like this actually. It is starting from some initial condition. So it would have at time t equal to 0, this much of displacement. Now in this case, it would be here the displacement is positive, here it is negative. So let us start like this. And here it starts with negative value. So let us start like this. So again, this is u1 and u2. So there exists a specific number of combination of these displacement, that if the free vibration is started with this combination, okay, the shape is maintained and the resulting motion is harmonic. Okay, so this is harmonic, this is harmonic. And if I have 2 degree of freedom, I would have 2 such mode shapes. If I have n degree of freedom, I would have n such mode shapes. Okay. Now, the time period of a multi-degree of freedom system. Okay. So remember, we had defined the time period of a single degree of freedom system. Okay. But we also need to define the time period of a multi-degree of freedom system. The question comes, what time period, which time period, right? Because now I have multiple mode shapes. So for a multi-degree of freedom system, the natural period of vibration, okay, the natural period of vibration Tn, okay, or instead of the, let us call it a natural period of vibration. Okay, a natural period of vibration of an MDF system is basically time taken to complete vibration in one of its modes. Okay, so it is basically the time required for one cycle of simple harmonic motion in one of these natural modes. Okay, So I have, let us say, first mode here and the second mode here. Okay. Now in this case, because I have initiated the motion in one of these mode, okay, the shape is going to maintain. Okay, the second mode also. So I would have a time period t1 or let us say frequency omega1 for this mode shape. For the second mode of vibration, again I would have omega2 and t2. Okay, and so on. If I have n degree of freedom system, then omega n and tn. So now we define the, for individual mode, the time period is defined. Okay. Now naturally the question would come that in reality, a structure would experience load whatever it would experience. There is no way that you are going to give this initial displacement and make it vibrate in a particular mode, right? So in reality, the structure might not or will most likely not vibrate in one of its mode. Okay. In reality or in general, and that's where I had come to this, that in general, the total response would have some of these mode contribution, some of these mode contribution, and so on. Okay. So in general, there would be vibration and the overall response is basically sum of each mode. And in general, the motion is actually not harmonic for U1, U2 or other degrees of freedom. Okay. But there exist specific number of combination or mode shapes which is equal to the number of degree of freedom, in which if you initiate the motion, then it is going to vibrate. And these mode shapes and the frequencies are the property of the structure. It depends on the structure itself. Okay, the mass and distance does not depend on the excitation. What does depend on the excitation is the response, the total response. Okay. So what do we do if I have n degrees of freedom? I sort them according to omega 1, omega 2 and so on, with omega 1 being the smallest frequency. So omega 2 and so on. Okay. And if you want to write in the time period, okay, then it becomes T1 greater than T2. So we sort it according to that. And then corresponding to each of these, I would have mode shape. Phi 1, phi 2 and so on. Now you know how do we represent mode shape, right? So let us say a mode shape, if I have, let us say this is for the mode 1, phi 2 1 at degree of freedom 2, phi 1 1 at degree of freedom 1. So the mode shape 1 is written as phi 1 1 and phi 2 1. Okay, and this only represents the relative displacement. So it is the shape. The actual response would be multiplied with this some factor. Now we studied this for a generalized coordinate system. Okay, it was multiplied with the time variation. Okay, but the shape is going to be represented by this. So if I have mode shape for jth mode of n degree of freedom system, how I'm going to write it? Vector phi j would be, the second subscript is always the mode number. So that you keep in mind. So 1j, phi 2j, okay, phi ij, and then phi nj. So second subscript is always correspond to the mode number. Okay, so this is the mode shape. Okay, the jth mode shape for an n degree of freedom system, and corresponding to that I have omega j and tj. Okay, the natural time period and the natural frequency. All right. Up to this point, is this clear to all of you? Any doubt with this? Be scared of asking any question at this point of time. Okay. You need to understand each and everything about multi-degree of freedom system, because that is what you are going to be actually analyzing or designing if you are designing a structure subject to a dynamic load. Okay. So you need to completely understand what is a mode shape. Okay, just do not understand only the mathematical formulation of it. You need to represent what happens when you excite a multiple degree of freedom system. It is going to respond in a certain way, which is not harmonic for each degree of freedom. However, the total response can be represented as a sum of characteristic shape which are harmonic. Okay, and how the total response is going to be governed, what total response is going to govern, that depends on the excitation and of course the natural properties of the body. Is this clear to all of you? Any doubt up to this point? Okay. If not, then I've told you, I've just given you, like, you know, that omega j, Tj, I've just defined this quantity, but now you also have to find these quantities, right? What is the frequency for each mode? How do we get the mode shape for each mode? Okay. So for that, what do? We solve the eigenvalue problem. Okay, and those of you who are taking course in numerical methods, you must have studied this eigenvalue problem. Okay, so we solve eigenvalue problem to get the, and we will see that why we need to solve the eigenvalue problem. Okay, because when we formulate our problem statement for a free vibration of a multi-degree of freedom system, naturally it reduces to an eigenvalue problem. Okay, so we need to find out the frequencies and mode shapes or characteristic shape or characteristic mode shapes, whatever you want to call it. Okay, now we said that if I have a 2 degree of freedom and let us say I have n degree of freedom or whatever you consider. Okay, something like this. This is u1, this is u2, this is u3. All of these displacement would be a function of time. Okay, so we said that, okay, that the total displacement vector, okay, is multiplication of the, okay, multiplication of the shape vector times the time variation, right? Because shape vector only consider the relative deformation or the ratio of the deformation. It does not consider the time variation. So if you have to consider the time variation of the total displacement, the shape factor needs to be multiplied with some time variation or the some time function. For generalized coordinate system, okay, we studied that we took that as parameter as zt, and we call this the generalized time variation. For this, we call this as q and t. Okay, just little bit of difference in notation, that's all, nothing else. So again, mode shape times the time variation, because the overall response would be the shape times how is it varying with time. That need to be multiplied to get the total deformation. And this ut is basically all the degrees of freedom, u1, u2, so on, u and t. Mode shape is, okay, phi. Okay, if so, this I'm considering for a single mode shape. So this is considering for the nth mode. I'm not yet considering for the all the modes, the total response. Okay, so maybe more appropriately, I should write this as unt for the nth mode. Okay, so u2t and un of nt. So this becomes phi 1t, phi 2nt, and so on, phi n of nt times qnt. Nth mode, I can write down this. Now my problem statement is, how do I find out phi and how do I find out the frequencies? Okay, now I said that I just discussed with you previously that if it is vibrating in its one of its mode shape, if the structure is vibrating in one of its mode shape, then the response is harmonic, correct? Now harmonic response, basically this is the shape factor. So for harmonic response, it means q and t can be written as an cos omega nt plus bn sin omega nt. Okay, this is the general equation. Okay, remember it can be reduced to some form, some constant times cos t minus phi. Okay, all I'm saying that this is the general equation of a harmonic motion, a harmonic response. And we said that when it vibrates in one of its modes, then the motion is harmonic. So I can assume my q and t would be some constant an times cos omega nt plus some constant bm times sin omega nt. And these constants an, bn, these all constants are determined using the initial conditions, like we did for single degree of freedom system. But now the initial condition would be in terms of vectors unt and unt dot 0. Okay, this is initial condition, and we utilize that to get that constant for each mode. Okay, so this is how for any particular nth mode, let us say, the equation of motion can be written. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to substitute basically this equation of motion, which is u nt is equal to phi nt, okay, times q nt in the equation of free vibration, which was m times u plus this acceleration and k times u, and this is equal to 0. Okay, so instead of that u. Okay, so this is the equation of motion. Now if I have my ut as nt times an cos omega nt plus bn sin omega nt. Okay, can you substitute this equation back in this, knowing that this is basically phi n? Okay, can you substitute back in this one and get me equation which is not in terms of u, but only m, omega n and phi n on all those quantities, and see what do you get? Okay, so take 2 minutes to do that. Substitute this equation, which is this quantity here, ut equal to phi n t times q n t. Okay, knowing that what is q double dot nt would be, and like, substitute back in this one and get me the final equation. What do you get? Can you do that? Take 2 minutes and do that. Okay, if I take the double differentiation of this one with respect to time, basically unt would be, acceleration would be omega n square t would come outside, right? It would become omega n square times phi n t, and again I will get the same quantity, so I'm going to just write as q n t here, and then I'm going to substitute it back to this equation. So I have minus omega n square m times phi n times q n t plus k times phi n. Remember, this is vector here, q n t. Okay, so if I take this outside, I have, let me write it like this. First, let me write the second term here. K minus omega n, or not, k times phi, vector phi here, minus omega n square mass times again vector phi times q n t. Okay, so I've taken q n t outside and just like, shuffled the first and the second term at each other's location. Okay, now one solution could be that q n t would be equal to 0. That means that there is no motion, and that is called a trivial solution. We know that there is a motion. Okay, so that is the case when the initial conditions are 0. Okay, so we are not going to get into that solution when q n t is 0. For non-zero solution, this quantity here should be 0, right? So if I equate it to 0, if this is non-zero, if this has to be non-zero, then this quantity needs to be 0. Okay, and for matrix, or like, this equation, I'm going to it again here, k times phi n omega n square m times phi n equal to 0. Okay, I can take the vector phi outside, so that I'm left with k minus omega n square m times the vector phi n. Okay, this equation is of form of a matrix A. Okay, or let us say I'm already writing matrix. So A times vector x is equal to lambda times vector bx. Or if you want to write it like this, A minus lambda b, A and B are matrices, remember, and x is a vector. Okay, this times vector x is equal to 0. What is this? You have studied in your numerical methods, right? This is the eigenvalue problem. This is the eigenvalue problem. When we solve eigenvalue problem, what does it give? It gives me the roots lambda and it gives me the vector x. Correct? So just take it, that concept here. When we solve this eigenvalue problem, it gives me the constant, which is here the frequency. It gives me omega n square. Okay. This is one mistake that most of you will do when you're doing the calculation. Okay, the constant is omega n square. It is not omega n. And the roots that you will get would be omega n square. So you have to take under root. So just keep that in mind. Be careful with that. So it will give me the eigenvalues which are omega n square, and it will give me the vectors phi n which are the mode shapes. Now understand, for each structure I would know what is my mass and stiffness, and correspondingly what is my mass and stiffness matrices. That would be given to me. So if the structure exists, I would know what is the stiffness and the mass matrix. Only two unknowns that I have here is the frequency and the mode shape. Okay. Now, although I substituted the mode shape for nth mode, when I write this equation, I get basically n roots, or instead of roots, let us say n real positive roots. That would give me n values of omega n square, omega 2n square, 2a square, and then omega n. Okay. So it will give me all the frequencies for all the modes. And when I substitute these values of omega n square back to this equation that I have, the eigenvalue equation, then I can also get my shape vector or mode shape phi 1, phi 2, and so on. Okay. So this is how I solve my eigenvalue problem. Okay. By solving the eigenvalue problem, basically, I get n positive real roots which provide me the values of omega n square for different number of modes. If I have n number of modes, I'll get n such values. And then for each mode, I substitute it and get the values of mode shapes. Okay. Is this clear up to this point? Okay. And as I previously mentioned, this is just a convention. Okay. We arrange these modes from lower frequency or in larger time period. So when I say fundamental mode or the first mode, basically fundamental mode is the first mode with largest time period or smallest frequency. And this is just a convention, that is all. Okay. So we will get that. All right. Any doubt up to this point? Okay. Now, if you look at it, let us demonstrate this through an example. It would become more clear. Okay. And let me take example of a 2 degree of freedom system that we have been doing. So basically what I have here, I have a mass 2m here and a mass m here, and then stiffness 2k and k, which basically represents the whole story stiffness, not of a single column. Okay. Now for this, it can be written like this, or it can be written like, it can be drawn like this, or it can be drawn like this. It doesn't really matter for a shear type building. Okay. For this system, I would like to know what is my omega 1 and what is my omega 2. Okay, utilizing this equation, first you will need to form the mass matrix, the stiffness matrix, then you need to solve omega n square. And oh, one thing that I forgot to mention, when I say that this is okay, how do I solve this equation? Okay, we solve this equation, the eigenvalue problem, by setting the determinant of this term here equal to 0. Okay, so as you would have already got into this one, if I have eigenvalue problem like this, the solution of this is found out by setting determinant of the shape vector to be equal to 0. So determinant of this whole matrix equal to 0. Okay, so either I can write it like this, okay, or so determinant of this matrix. If I have to write just determinant, I will just write it like this. This equal to 0, same thing. Okay, so you are going to find out m, going to find out k. Solve it like this. Remember, your answer would be in terms of k by m, k and m, both factors. So can you do that for me? Can you take 5 minutes, form the stiffness matrix and the mass matrix, set up the equation of motion, get me the value of omega 1 and omega 2 first, and then corresponding to this omega 1 and omega 2, get me the vector phi 1 and phi 2. Please take 5 minutes and solve this problem, and then we are going to come back and discuss. Okay, let us do this problem. Now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to go through, like, drawing the free body diagram every time and, like, show you the forces and set up the equation of motion. I'm directly going to write down the stiffness matrices, mass matrices. Okay, and you will see that most of the cases, for the simple cases, it is easy to do that. Okay, now for a 2-story building like this, if it is K1 and this is K2, we had done this for 3-story building, right? So for 2-story building, just forget about the third column, third row in all these mass and stiffness matrices. That's all. So if this is M1 and this is M2, and these are the degrees of freedom, then the mass matrix simply becomes diagonal matrix 0 M1 and 0 M2, because my degrees of freedom are defined along these masses. Okay, and my stiffness matrix simply becomes K1 plus K2 minus K2 minus K2 and then K2 here. So if I consider that and compare that to this structure, my mass matrix is 2M0, 0M, and stiffness matrix is K1 plus K2, which is 2K plus K. So 3K, K2 is K, so minus K here, minus K and this K. Okay. So to get or to solve the eigenvalue problem, which is basically, so remember, my actual eigenvalue problem is this. Okay, the solution of this we get as the determinant of this equal to 0. Okay, so I can substitute that. I can get that as 3K minus K and K minus omega square times 2M 0 M. So usually, if you have a matrix eigenvalue problem of order n, you will get a polynomial, okay, with power n to solve, and that will give you n positive real root. Now in this case, that constant here is omega n square, so I will get a polynomial with power 2 because I have 2 degrees of freedom. So basically omega square to the power 2, which would be omega 4. Okay, so either you can assume omega square equal to lambda and then you can get the values, or it is up to you. It doesn't really matter actually. So the determinant of this is this 3K minus 2M omega square. So I'm still continuing with omega square here. And then minus K. Okay. Minus K minus omega square times 0. So that is 0. Again minus K. And that would be K minus omega square M. And this equal to 0. So if the determinant means I need to multiply 3K and K minus M omega square minus K square, this is equal to 0. So you can expand this determinant, this is what you will get. and you can rearrange this. Okay, you can rearrange this equation of motion and get the final equation 2m square omega 4, okay, minus 5 km omega square, okay, plus 2k square equal to 0. Okay, so this is a quadratic in omega square. So omega square is basically 5. Okay, remember, if you have quadratic ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0, the roots are minus b plus minus under root b square minus 4ac by 2a. Okay, minus b plus minus b square minus 4ac by 2a. So I'm just writing that one, minus b, so minus 5 km plus minus 25 k square m square minus 4 times 2k square and 2m square. So this is 16 k square m square divided by 2a, which is 2 times 2m square, so 4m square. So omega square I get as 5 km plus minus, this would be 9k square m square. So that would be 3 km divided by 4 m square. Okay, so positive and negative sign going to give me as, let me say, omega 1 square as, okay, remember we first consider the smaller frequency. Okay, so here it would be minus sign first. So 2 km by 2m square, which would be k by 2m, and omega 2 square would be 2k by m. So omega, you just take the root of this to get the frequency. Okay, so we've got this frequency. Now to get the mode shape, what I need to do, I need to substitute it back in the eigenvalue equation, which was k minus omega square m this times phi equal to 0. So when I substitute omega 1, I will get phi 1. When I substitute omega 2, I will get phi 2. Okay, and I can just substitute in this equation itself, like, this here, which I can write it as 3k minus 2m omega n square minus k, then minus k minus omega square m. And this times, remember, phi 1, I can write it as, okay, for the mode 1, the degree, the modal coordinate at 1. For the mode 1, modal coordinate at 2. Phi 2 would be phi modal coordinate at 1 due to in mode 2, modal coordinate at 2 in mode 2. So second subscript is always the mode, if you get confused. Okay, so basically this gives me, if I substitute the value of omega 1 square at this k by 2m, okay, I can write this as 2k minus k, and this would be k by 2, phi 1 1, phi 2 1. All right, so basically these are two simultaneous equations, but if you look at them carefully, okay, what do you get? 2k times phi 1 1 minus k times phi 2 1. This is minus k times phi 1 1 plus k by 2 times phi 2 1. Aren't these two equations the same? Basically, if you multiply the first equation by minus half, you will get the second equation, right? So these are the same equation. Now the second thing is, this is equal to 0. So in general, this would have infinite number of solutions, isn't it? However, for mode shapes, what we do, we can only find out the mode shape with respect to certain multiplicative factor. Okay, so what do we do to find out mode shape? We normalize the mode shape with respect to one of the modal coordinate, or there are other ways to normalize it. Okay, so typically for a multi-story building, you may choose to normalize it with respect to the topmost mode here. So if you assume this to be 1, you find out what this is. So let us say I assume phi 2 1 is equal to 1. So phi 1 1 becomes half. and my mode 1 is half, okay, and 1. Because remember, for mode shape, we just need the relative shape. We do not care about the absolute values. So solving the eigenvalue problem for this modal frequencies and mode shapes won't give you the exact value. It will give you the relative values, and that is okay for us because we only need the relative shape. And that can be represented by this, because this is the shape, same shape as 1 or 2 or 2 or 4. All these represent the same shape. Okay. Now we can do the same thing for omega 2 square equal to 2k by m. And we can substitute that, and we'll see that we get phi 2 as, in that case, okay, phi 2 would come out to be, it would be positive on the, so again we are normalizing with respect to the top coordinate. Okay, and if we do that, it will give us -1 here and 1 here after you substitute this value in this equation. Now you better go ahead, remember this is phi 1, you better go ahead and draw the shape to see how it looks like. Remember this shape is 1 and 1 by 2. If you try to draw the shape, second shape, the second mode shape, okay, if you consider 1 here, it is saying that at degree of freedom 1, it is in opposite direction of -1. So if you consider u2 equal to 1 at the degree of freedom 1, it is -1. So it looks like something like this. 1 -1. This is mode shape 2. And the mode shape 1 is this 1.5. Okay. So many times in the problem is it would also be asked to you that which is the correct mode shape. All you need to do is to substitute the same coordinate and draw to see how the mode shape looks like. Okay. Now, one thing that you need to be careful, you cannot normalize one mode shape with respect to some other degree of freedom and the other mode shape with respect to other degrees of freedom. Okay. Because later you will see that will give you incorrect response. So what I'm saying, if you are normalizing the mode shape with respect to the top degree of freedom for a multi-story building, then for the second mode shape you also do that, for the third mode shape you also do that. Okay. And in the end, the answer does not depend on how you as you normalize this consistently for each mode. Like many times what people will do, they will normalize mode shape with respect to the largest coordinate. Okay. Or there are other ways of normalizing the mode shapes as well. Okay, which we are going to study further in this chapter. Okay, but just remember, if you have assumed that you are going to normalize with respect to particular degree of freedom, then for all the other mode shape for that particular problem, make sure that you follow the same normalization with respect to same degree of freedom. Okay, it's not that in the second one you are going to normalize with respect to first degree of freedom and then going to assume you are going to consider this as 1 and this as this as -1 and this as 1. I'm again keep writing the same thing. 1 and -1. Okay, because although these two represents the same mode shape, this is now not normalized similarly as this one because the top degree of freedom is here 1 and here it is -1. So do not do that. Is this clear up to this point? Anybody has any doubt? Anyone? Okay, if this is clear, then what we can do, last class we solved the problem for a continuous bar, right? Okay, what I want you to do now, and for that you have already got your mass matrix and the stiffness matrix, correct? Okay, so let me just redraw the problem again. So I had a rigid bar of mass m, okay, supported on two springs, and now these are not K1, K2, but these are actually K and 2K here. And the degrees of freedom that I'm considering are actually U1 and U2. Okay, the total mass is m, the length is L. All right. What you need to do first, considering this degree of freedom, find out the frequency omega 1 and omega 2 and the mode shapes phi 1 and phi 2 and draw it. And in the second case, I'm representing the same bar with this degree of freedom, ut and u theta. Again, everything else remain the same. Only the degrees of freedom have changed now. Okay. For this also find out omega 1 and omega 2 and then phi 1 and phi 2. Okay. So take 10 minutes and do this problem. Remember last class we have already derived in terms of K1, K2 and M for these two situations. What would be your mass and stiffness matrix? Now only you need to substitute it and find out using the characteristic equation, the eigenvalue problem. What are these values? Omega 1, omega 2 and phi 1 and phi 2. Okay. Okay. Remember for the first case we had derived the mass matrix as, if I take m by 6 outside, okay, this was 2, 1, 1, 2. And the stiffness matrix as 1, 0, 0, 2. And you can go ahead and solve the eigenvalue problem and you can find out the omega 1 and omega 2 by substituting the values as this. You can get it as and omega 2 as k by m. Now for this case, again, you can write down the mass matrix as m 0 and 0. And now I have this ml square by 12 because I'm considering rotational degree of freedom. And your stiffness matrix is 3k kl by 2. Remember k1, k2 I'm replacing with k and 2k. Okay. So again, you can solve the eigenvalue problem and get omega 1 and omega 2 as same what I have got here. Okay, 2.54 k by m and 9.46 k by m. So these two systems, even if you consider different degrees of freedom, you got the same frequencies. However, if you try to draw the mode shapes, okay, and let us say in the first case, you try to normalize mode shape with respect to the degree of freedom here, u1. Okay, let us say you try to draw it u1. So you can find out the mode shape and you can draw it. Okay, so let us say phi 11 is equal to 1, so that your phi 21 becomes equal to 0.366. Okay, similarly, you can find out the second mode shape, and if you normalize with respect to this, you will see that if this is 1, this was on the negative side. Okay, so this phi 12 is actually 1, and the phi 21 is minus 1.37. Okay, so these are with respect to u1 and u2. For the second case again, you can draw the mode shape, and now these are with respect to ut and u theta. And if you consider, and if you normalize mode shape with respect to ut, so let us consider this as first mode shape here. Okay, ut you consider as 1, your u theta will become this angle here, because remember now the angle. So ut is 1, u theta will become around minus, because it is in the anti-clockwise direction. So I'm going to write it as minus 0.93 by L. For the second case, again, if I consider ut as 1, this will become phi minus 12.93 divided by L. Okay, now one thing to notice here, the shape of both look same. But is there a way to confirm that both of these corresponds to the same mode shape? Because frequency we have already established with a single numerical value. Well, we can do that if you consider here that u1 is this and u2 is this quantity. So u1 would become 1 plus 0.93 by L, the angle times L by 2, and u2 will become 1 minus 0.93 divided by L times L by 2. And then if you take the ratio of u2 with respect to u1, you find out what do you get. It should be exactly equal to 0.366. And this is how you can confirm that these both mode shape, although look visually similar, they are also numerically represents the same mode shape. Is this clear to all of you? That even if I solve these two systems with the different representation of the degrees of freedom and they get different mass and stiffness matrix, if they represent the same system, their frequency and the mode shapes would be similar. Okay. Conversely, I can say my two structures are similar dynamically if they have the same frequency and the same mode shape. Any doubt up to this point? Anybody? So again, I would like you to go back, review this lecture material. Okay. Try to understand what we have done. If there is any doubt, you can come back again tomorrow and we can discuss in the class. All right. Okay. We'll conclude our class here today. We'll meet on the scheduled time tomorrow. Thank you.